Geiger Investments presents the Retirement Focus Academy with Kevin Geiger. There are many pieces to the modern retirement puzzle. This show talks about those pieces of retirement and the tools used to help the retired and soon to be retired toward their lifetime goals. Welcome. The Academy is on the air.
Welcome to the Retirement Focus Academy, powered by Geiger Investments. I'm Mark Elliott. Kevin Geiger, of course, Geiger Investments, Carolina Medicare. A lot of moving parts at this company. Kevin and his wife, Lauren, have really created a lot of different areas because retirement planning is so much different than it was for my grandparents, so I can tell you that. My granddad right now would probably be 110 or 115. Well, he's not here anymore. But if you're retiring in the 70s and 80s, that's much different than trying to retire now. I cannot retire the way my granddad did. Right? So that is why Kevin and Lauren started the Retirement Focus Academy. It's a great resource for anyone nearing or even in retirement to find out about different topics that pertain to retirement. There are 15 workshops right now on this. You can go in person. You have on-demand options, but it's a great resource, retirementfocusacademy.com. Great resource, always free of charge to you. Check it out. All right. Now, we're going to talk about retirement today versus retirements of yesteryear. And Kevin, I always think about, you've been doing this for 20 years. So my guess is since 2000 to 2021, retirements are even different in that context. But my granddad was retiring in the late 70s, okay? And he was a guy that worked for a milk company for 40 years, got the gold watch, rode off to the sunset. He had a pension, he had Social Security, and then he had high interest rates at the bank where he could just ladder CDs, get 10, 12, 14%. And income was not a problem for that era. Now, inflation was a big problem for that era. I don't have an inflation issue, even though I know things are costing more. I may be getting less in my potato chip bag than I used to get. But I don't have a pension. My Social Security, there's a lot of question marks about it. So my three-legged stool is definitely wobbling. I better have good balance to be able to try to stay afloat. Talk about the difference from when you started in this business 20 years ago to today, even then, let alone 50 years ago. It's different for today's retirees, isn't it? Today's retirees can't retire the way their ancestors did.
No, yeah, it's changed dramatically, and it's going to continue to change. There's so many new variables for someone retiring today versus when I first started in this business, which ironically is actually going to be 21 years next month. So,
there you go.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting, but it is, and what people have to understand is you have to have this mindset, and you got to stop listening to the bad information out there because there's a lot of it. There's a lot of good information and bad information too. People don't have the luxury of having a company pension these days. Some that still have them, great. I applaud you because it's still there, but unfortunately it's disappearing, especially in the private sector. I mean, it's hard to come by altogether. So you have to understand that you have to start planning for the idea that you need to create your own personal pension account. And that doesn't mean just, well, hey, I'm going to take my 401k, I'm going to roll it over to one of those big companies, and I'm just going to draw it out because I read online if I draw out 4% or 5%, I'll be perfectly fine and all that kind of stuff. I can tell you from experience, and in 2008 was a great example of that. We had so many potential clients that were going to become clients of ours, decided that they could just do it their own way, and they did. And unfortunately, they were a year or two into retirement, and they just got demolished. Their account went down 40, 50% because they took too much risk in their portfolio because they saw them making money, and they figured nothing's ever going to change. A lot of them invest in the real estate side and really got killed. And their whole lifestyle changed because they didn't they didn't diversify. They didn't use the vehicles, the tools that are out there, right? You look in your toolbox. Is there just a Phillips screwdriver in there? No, you've got many different screwdrivers in there because every screwdriver and wrench and everything else is built for a certain type of job. And the same thing goes in retirement. Today's world, we have so many different vehicles out there because insurance companies have gotten really smart to realize that there are situations where they're noticing that people just don't have those types of guaranteed pension accounts anymore, so they want to create these accounts for you. At the same time, they've even created vehicles to help you invest and not have to take all the risk in the market. So there's ways of doing that kind of stuff to alleviate this kind of stuff. So you've got to understand that there's options out there, and you have to be willing to sit down and look and figure out what tools in my toolbox that I have that will actually work best for you for your retirement.
And you're in a great line of work because my guess is if they're like me, and I'm 61, I will be 62 in November of 2021, which equals Social Security, but yet I'm still going to be working, so I won't be starting at that point because you got to give back every $1 for every two that you make if it's over 18,000. So I do barely make over 18,000, so that's a positive. But I can't start Social Security yet. But you think about it, when people come in and sit down with you, how many of them really understand all the moving parts of retirement? I think it was maybe last week's show where you're talking about people come in and they don't really understand what is actually in their budget, what's going out, what's coming in. They just know that every time their paycheck comes in, there was a little bit of money left over at the end of the month, so we're doing okay, but they don't know the particulars. Do you feel like people are prepared properly for retirement when they come in and sit down with you for the first time, not after chatting with you for a while, but that first meeting?
I would say probably 85% of them are not prepared. They think they are. They think they figured it out, and they go on Google and Yahoo and all this kind of stuff, and they research things, and they go, I got this figured out, or I followed the big green line. You can invest online with these companies, for example, and they're going to provide all these tools. And unfortunately, I call it passive information. It's generalized information that's out there, and unfortunately, everyone's situation is unique. So every person we have, we have so many clients that we've obviously brought on to Geiger Investments over the last 20 years, and every one of them, I can't tell you that any one of those clients have the exact same needs, and neither one of them have a plan that's exactly the same. So you've got to understand that you've got to come into retirement, and I always say it's better to prepare a couple years before that and sit down with us so we can actually put a plan together with your needs and show you how each piece of the puzzle is going to work. How we're going to maximize your Social Security, how we're going to maximize your income, how we're going to maximize the rest of that money to continue to grow that while you're in retirement. It's a great way of looking at it, where if we can take a chunk of change and put it into an investment vehicle that's going to provide that income source for yourself and maximize your Social Security going forward, now you have an income source that's going to be flourishing and coming out of the bucket, filling your liquidity bucket, as we always talk about the 3-bucket approach, and having that income that's going to do you good in retirement. And then we could take the rest of that money and continue to grow it just like it was in your 401k, but using lots of different investment vehicles to do so. And if you do that, you're going to be more successful and you're going to be happier in retirement because you just know that you have your stuff in place and you don't have to worry about anything altering it, whether the market crashes and things like that, because we set it up properly. But it all comes down to organizing it, having a budget, knowing what your fixed income is going to be, and putting a plan together and executing it. That's the biggest pieces to the puzzle. And if you don't do that, there's no way of guaranteeing anything's going to be good in retirement unless you have a plan.
Absolutely. And if you have questions, think about the 3-bucket approach that Kevin was talking about. He's talked about a lot of his programs. It starts with liquidity. That's your first bucket because you're retired. You need a bucket that actually gives you the money to go do and pay the bills and all of that. So you have a liquid bucket. You have an income bucket. And then, of course, you have a growth bucket. You've got moving parts here in this retirement world. Tomorrow's retirement is not yesterday's retirement. That's what we're trying to get across. It's different, and everybody's situation is different. If you'd like to sit down with a team at Geiger Investments, give them a call. They don't know if they can help you till they hear your situation, but they would love to hear your situation to see if they can help you. 843-375-8700 is the number. 843-375-8700. And I have a feeling that the Retirement Focus Academy that you and Lauren started, your wife, retirementfocusacademy.com, was because a lot of people make some common mistakes when it comes to going into investments or, how to create the income that they need for retirement. Are there common do-it-yourself retiree mistakes that you see?
Yeah, there is, and that's exactly why we created the Retirement Focus Academy, because what I've noticed over the years is as people are coming into retirement now, they've gotten so comfortable managing their own finances and managing their own 401k, and they've done well because, let's face it, over the years, this has been a great bull run since '08, and this is the time that most people that are going into retirement have accumulated. So, we set up the Retirement Focus Academy for that reason because, there's too many people just deciding they're going to do it themselves. I can tell you, over and over and over, we have one of the spouses, it's usually the one that might not be working, it calls us, says, I'm concerned about how we're doing with our finances, we're about to retire, or we just went into retirement, and the spouse comes in, and both of them come in together, and the other one's just sitting there with their arms crossed, just looking at me like they could care less, right? And so I see this, and so what's neat about this is in that meeting, we try to educate them. I can see already they're not going to become a client, and that's fine. But we wanted to provide that information to them, and so that's why we came up with the idea of creating the Retirement Focus Academy, because there's too many mistakes. How are you going to split these assets up to provide that income and provide the growth? How are you going to maximize on your Social Security? How are you going to keep the taxes as low as you possibly can in retirement? How are you going to handle your Medicare scenarios? And all these different things that are out there. And so we set up those classes to basically cover all those do-it-yourself mistakes. So if you decide you want to go on your own, great. And in many cases, people do go that route. They utilize our free resources and the stuff that we put out there and the stuff that we talk about in meetings, and we put it into these educational shops. And in many cases, I would say probably half of them end up becoming clients of ours in the end because they just finally realize it's just too much to do on their own. Why not just have someone that's an expert do it so you know that things are done right? But if you decide to do it on your own, at least this will help you with your do-it-yourself mistakes so you don't make them going forward, because one mistake in retirement could alter everything going forward. So it's important to do it right and make sure you have the right information.
RetirementFocusAcademy.com. Right now, 15 workshops there. Some of them are available on demand as well. RetirementFocusAcademy.com. It's a great resource for you if you're nearing retirement or in retirement, and it's always free of charge to you. RetirementFocusAcademy.com. Final question for you this segment. We still got another half to get to. I know you see people that come in that are like, Kevin, I'm not really sure I can retire. And you're like, you could have retired 5 years ago. You've won the game, right? Those are the people that are really nervous. Those would be your savers types. The spender types come in and go, Kevin, I think I'm going to retire. I think I'm good. Don't really know. Don't really care. I'm just going. I'm done. I'm done working. One of the things I wonder, if somebody comes in, because let's say they did their little budget thing, right? And they said, I need $5,000 a month. It looks like I can only come up with $4,000 a month. I guess I just have to keep working. And they just go, I just put my head back to the grindstone and keep going. There's ways that you might be able to help them, isn't there?
There is, yeah, because when we sit down with people, we look at everything, right? So the whole idea is getting a clear picture as far as what your situation is, because again, everyone's situation is different. You might still have a mortgage, you might have a car payment still, you might have health issues that are going on. You might have health issues with one of your children that now is living with you for the rest of your life. Everything's different in everyone's situation there. So it's understanding all that kind of stuff, and it's understanding how are you going to put yourself in a situation where you're going to have that fixed income set up. What are you using for vehicles to do so? Social Security is one vehicle, but unfortunately, Social Security is probably not going to cover all of it for you. In some cases, it does. But in many cases, from times I've sat down with people, it probably about 80% of the time does not provide enough of the income. So what are you going to use for those tools? And then lastly is, what are you going to do with your investments going forward? Unfortunately, when you go into retirement, you got to be careful that you're not taking too much risk with your investments. And how do you know if you are or you're not? Just because you stick it into a portfolio that, one of these companies that you just moved your money over to has, how do you know that that's not taking too much risk? So these are the kind of things that we do when we sit down with people, is we take a look at everything. We say, let's tear it all apart. Let's reorganize it. Let's use third-party, software that'll actually score, the amount of risk you're taking in your portfolio, and then let's put a plan together that's actually going to best fit your needs. That's the most important things that you need to be starting to do, and then the rest of it is just gravy from that point on. And then knowing that if I'm on your side, knowing I have this all in place, I'm going to feel a lot better going into retirement. I just know from people that have become clients of ours, they have that feeling because they now get a clearer picture of everything. They understand what's going on. And then they know how it's going to work, especially in a downturn market, and how it's not going to affect them when the market goes down, because all the pieces of the puzzle are all set in place to provide all the stuff they need in retirement. So those are the key pieces that everyone needs to have a better understanding about.
So again, you can go to RetirementFocusAcademy.com to just educate yourself, especially if you're do-it-yourselfer. Find out some answers that maybe you're not clear on because of these topics. There's 15 workshops there. It's a great resource for everybody, and it's free of charge to you, RetirementFocusAcademy.com. If you want to sit down with Kevin and the team at Geiger Investments, though, and talk about your specific situation, do I have an income plan? Do I have an investment strategy? Do I have a tax-efficient strategy? Healthcare, long-term care, legacy, estate planning. What about Social Security? It's in the income part. What about Medicare? It's in the healthcare part. All of those moving parts, we might think we're okay, but we're not really sure if we have all those areas covered. Why not just chat with the team and find out? They're here to help. 843-375-8700. No cost for this call. 843-375-8700. We're back with more with Kevin Geiger. This is Retirement Focus Academy, powered by Geiger Investments.
You know what you want to do in retirement, but do you know how to get there? Get the retirement planning information you need by joining Kevin Geiger of Geiger Investments for the Retirement Focus Academy. What's the best way for you to take Social Security? When can you sign up for Medicare, and what does it actually cover? What and is there a way to lower your tax bill? These and much more will be discussed. To enroll in an upcoming virtual Retirement Focus Academy course, visit retirementfocusacademy.com or call 843-790-9293. Plan today so you can do the things you've dreamt about doing in retirement. Sign up for the Retirement Focus Academy with Kevin Geiger of Geiger Investments at retirementfocusacademy.com or call 843-790-9293. Advisory services offered through Black Ridge Asset Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Securities offered through Peak Brokerage Services, LLC, member FINRA SIPC. Black Ridge Asset Management, LLC and Geiger Investments are separate and independent entities from Peak Brokerage Services, LLC. Our firm is not affiliated with the U.S. government.
You're listening to the Retirement Focus Academy with Kevin Geiger, powered by Geiger Investments. 843-375-8700.
You can find out more about Kevin, wife Lauren, and the team. GeigerInvestments.com. Geiger, G-E-I-G-E-R, GeigerInvestments.com. And, of course, we always talk about the Retirement Focus Academy. It's a great resource for anyone nearing or in retirement. It's always free of charge to you, but there's a lot of different educational workshops covering all topics related to retirement. Check it out, retirementfocusacademy.com. We're talking about today's retirement is different than yesterday's, which means tomorrow's retirement is probably different than today's. Things are moving fast, it seems. Taxes are certainly one of those moving parts right now. Under the Biden administration, there's a lot of new proposals out there. Kevin and the team are keeping up with all of that. And next time we might even talk about some of these new proposals that are out there. But there's just a lot of moving parts, and things are changing rapidly. There's no question. One thing I do want to go, before we get into how do we create our own pension and how do we figure out Medicare, which is certainly a company that you and Lauren have, Carolina Medicare, that helps people make those decisions. But before I get to that, because of the pandemic year and people were laid off, furloughed, found out, holy cow, do I need an emergency fund? I didn't have quite enough in there. I need to do better in the emergency fund category for those unexpected things that will happen, it seems, all the time. How can you help people that maybe don't quite have enough to retire the way they want to, but maybe they can't go back to work because they lost their job. They were 68 years old, lost their job due to the pandemic, and now they say, well, you're too old. You're too expensive. I'm not going to hire you back. I mean, that's a tough place to be in. How do you help those people?
Well, it's an unfortunate thing in that we saw a lot of that happening throughout last year, and we've had people come in, or a lot of times we're doing these virtual meetings, which is interesting for us to adjust to that lifestyle of having to not be able to sit face to face with people. But there were scenarios like that a lot last year, and we sat down with them and we tried to kind of take what they had, what they've saved, and some maybe didn't save as much as they should have for retirement. Some had more than enough, and we're like, you're good, and we're going to put a plan together, and Godspeed, here you go. And then there's others that maybe were a little behind the eight ball, and we had to try to figure out ways to make what they had work. And in a lot of scenarios we did. We found ways for them to help cut their expenses down, which basically altered their fixed income scenario, because it all comes down to income and expenses. Well, if you can't get more income, you better find a way to cut the expenses so you have more income, basically. So, and we did that, and it really comes down to a plan. So people have a misunderstanding when they come into our office thinking all we do is investment stuff, and that's not true. Our job is to figure out how to get you the best bang for the buck for income for retirement, how to manage your investments, and how to reduce the risk for those investments. But at the same time, we take a look at all your expenses and we find ways for you to cut the expenses in a lot of ways. Things you never even thought about, things you never reshopped. When's the last time you called your insurance company? When's the last time you called Comcast or DirecTV or whatever you're using for your TV service to renegotiate your terms? And people are like, well, you can do that? Yeah, you can. So those are kind of things that we do with people. And it's important to know that, it doesn't matter what your situation is. There's a way to fix it in a lot of cases. And if we can try to make it better, that's what we do. And it's a good understanding as far as what we do in our office for people.
We were talking about the fact that most workers today, there are still some jobs that obviously have pensions available. But a lot of companies that did have pensions and still do for their longtime employees. The new employees aren't getting a pension. They're getting a 401k, 403b, 457. So there are ways, though, because Geiger Investments can help you in the investment world, the Wall Street world, but they can also help you in the insurance world. Are there ways that you can help people maybe create their own pension if income is really something that they need a little bit more of to securely retire? Absolutely.
You've got to understand there are tools available for you out there, right? I talked about before, it's not just the one screwdriver. I mean, how many times you pull out a Phillips screwdriver and there's 5 different sizes and you think, well, I'm just going to use the big one for the small screw. It's just not going to work. Well, there's tools out there that you need to utilize. Insurance companies have been very smart to get involved into creating personal pension accounts for people so they can have that stress-free retirement knowing they have that income source in place. And I'll be honest. I mean, if you compare an insurance company, in my opinion, again, this is an opinion, but if you compare an insurance company compared to your company pension that you might have, I could tell you that the insurance company is probably financially in better shape because they manage their money a little differently. This is what they do for a living, whereas your company is unfortunately having to figure out how they're going to keep paying for these pensions. And if things change with the company, now your pension scenario is going to change. So knowing that you have an insurance company, this is what they do all day. They do life insurance. They do annuities that can provide these pension types of accounts for yourself. Knowing that they have these vehicles in place and they run their numbers, they know how the expenses are going to work, so they can make sure that you can have a stress-free retirement knowing that you have that personal pension or that paycheck coming in. And I would say it's nice to know that you can open up that mailbox every day and see that paycheck in there, right? Retirement. Yeah. I mean, that's a big piece of the puzzle. Well, it's nice to know, like in this day of age, we all do things direct deposit, knowing that you get that alert from your Chase Bank or whoever bank you're using that there's a direct deposit in there every month on the first of the month, and that's your paycheck coming in from the insurance companies to provide that security in retirement. Wouldn't it be nice to know that you can have that available for you? But if you don't look at stuff and evaluate things and understand there are tools available out there to make life easier for you in retirement, then you're missing the boat. And the idea is just don't put all your eggs in one basket. And if you can look at this stuff, it might alter and change your retirement for the better. And I think that's important for everyone to really look at.
Yeah. Everybody's situation is different. That's why Geiger Investments is here to help you. 843-375-8700 is the number. No cost, no obligation, no pressure for chatting with the team. They're here to help. They just don't know if they can help till they hear your situation. And if they can't help, maybe they can give you some advice that somebody that can, or some ideas to help you in a different situation maybe. 843-375-8700. Now, we've talked about, Kevin, there's a lot of moving parts in retirement planning. And that's what Geiger Investments is. You can certainly help with investments because it says it right there in the name, Geiger Investments. But it's more than that. It's retirement planning, which is why you and Lauren also have Carolina Medicare to help people with that. We're going to touch on that before we wrap up today's show as well. But you think about it. There's so many moving parts. There's income planning, investment strategies, tax-efficient strategies, long-term care, health care, legacy estate planning, Social Security's in the income part, Medicare's in the health care part. That's 5 key areas that we really need to have a plan for. And each one has its own plan, but they're all kind of interrelated. We don't look at one just by itself. It's kind of like when you take Social Security. You don't look at just, if I wait till 70, I get the most, that's my best decision. No, it may not be. It might be a different time you should take it for your situation. But is income planning where really it all starts?
Yeah. Well, let's face it. You now retired or maybe got forced into retirement. Your paycheck has stopped. If your paycheck stopped, where is that going to come from? Unfortunately, bills don't stop, right? So you've got to have something coming in for income, and you can't rely on just drawing off of your 401k money that you've saved up and thinking that's going to be the best approach. You have to know that you've got to find ways of maximizing your Social Security, right? And that's a really big piece of the puzzle, and that's one of the number one things we figure out is how can we maximize your retirement, maximize your Social Security, maximize your income, utilizing these personal pension accounts the insurance companies have provided to put that in place, because that's the number one thing that we solve in our office. It's always about the income first, making sure that we're covering your expenses and then putting everything else in place from there. So yes, income is the number one thing because that's the one thing that you lose as soon as you retire. So big thing, important piece of the puzzle that everyone needs to understand.
All right, so let's wrap up today's show. We got about 3 minutes left. Let's talk Medicare. And it's the largest health insurance program offered by the U.S. government, serving more than 55 million people. Now, the challenge is Parts A and B are original Medicare. Part C is Medicare Advantage. Part D is the prescription drug coverage. Now, Medicare supplements and Medigap are the same thing, even though we hear people using the terms. And that confuses people. People think there's three things. There's Medicare Advantage, there's Medicare supplements, and there's Medigap. No, Medicare supplements and Medigap are the same. How important is it to make the proper Medicare decisions? Because this is a whole new world, which is why you have its own company, Carolina Medicare, to help people with this.
Yep, and that's exactly why we set that up. We didn't want it to be part of Geiger Investments. We wanted people to understand that we have a Medicare company called Carolina Medicare, and because we found that there's a need for that, because people are making too many bad decisions on their Medicare. Too many people maybe just have their A and B only, and they're thinking that's sufficient. But what people don't understand is you have a 20% coinsurance you're going to have to deal with. And if you can't afford to buy a Medigap or a Medicare supplement plan, which obviously you pay a few extra bucks for, but the insurance benefit is covering that extra coinsurance of the Part A and Part B, there's Medicare Advantage plans, and these are all the ones you see in the commercials, $0. Yes, it's $0 in many cases, and this will end up being, in a lot of cases, way better than just having A and B, because a lot of times they have dental, they have vision, and all the stuff included, plus they have drug coverage and everything else included in that kind of stuff. That's going to make your retirement a lot better, because now you're cutting down your medical expenses in retirement, because that's going to be one of the biggest expenses that you're going to have to deal with in retirement. So you got to make those proper decisions. And so that's why, during the open enrollment period, we do Medicare Made Simple. We change the whole radio show just simply to talk about that, because there's just such a need and such bad information out there that we want to make sure people are doing the right things. And I can tell we had a successful year last year doing the radio show, because we had so many people calling in going, I thought I figured this out, but after listening to you, clearly we're lost, and they wanted to get more information. So a lot of information out there. Good opportunity to give us a call, and we can kind of help you out with that.
All right, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to answer this loaded question. Does income planning and tax planning that we do on the Geiger investment side have anything to do with Medicare?
Absolutely, because depending on how much income you have coming in and everything else can affect your Medicare cost. Your Medicare cost can go up dramatically if you don't do proper planning with your income and tax plans. Big piece of the puzzle. All of it works together, and it's important to understand all that stuff.
843-375-8700 is the number for Geiger Investments. You want to learn more about your specific situation. How can Kevin and Lauren and the team help you put this plan together? And remember, the plan is not written in stone. Things happen. Just because you retire doesn't mean the roads are paved with gold now and there's no potholes. No, there's still going to be potholes. There's still going to be challenges along the way, but you put a plan in place and then you adjust as needed moving forward. It's super, super important. 843-375-8700. Kevin and the team at Geiger Investments here to help you. If they can, fantastic. If they can't, maybe they can give you some advice to help you moving forward or somewhere else. But typically, Kevin and the team can come up with something to help you, especially if you're a do-it-yourselfer. And maybe your spouse doesn't want anything to do with this. Well, you need to make sure that somebody understands how to help your spouse if you're not here anymore. 843-375-8700. And, of course, you can always go to the retirementfocusacademy.com website to learn more about some topics that you would like to learn more about. Kevin, enjoyed it. Have a great week, and we'll do it again next week.
Sounds good, Mark, and take care, y'all.
Advisory services offered through Black Ridge Asset Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Peak Brokerage Services, LLC, member FINRA and SIPC. Black Ridge Asset Management, LLC, and Geiger Investments are separate and independent entities from Peak Brokerage Services, LLC. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation. Black Ridge Asset Management, LLC is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Black Ridge Asset Management, LLC. This radio show is a paid placement.